preparing for trial. Democrats and Republicans in the Senate debate whether to allow witnesses in the impeachment case against President Donald Trump. We have team coverage, including a look at the new lawyers who will help defend the president. A healthy outlook. Pope Francis tells the faithful why spiritual well-being is so important. And many blessings, why it was a big day for animals in Spain and Italy. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, January 17th, 2020.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Donald Trump forms a legal team for his upcoming Senate impeachment trial. His defense will include former Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, as well as Ken Starr, the independent counsel who investigated President Bill Clinton. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, the president's team will be led by his personal lawyer, Jay Sekulow, and White House counsel Pat Cipollone. But now the president has added some big-name attorneys to beef up his defense.
President Trump brings a group of high-profile attorneys to defend him at the Senate impeachment trial. One of them, Ken Starr, led the Whitewater investigation into Bill Clinton. Harvard University law professor Alan Dershowitz also joins Trump's legal team. And we've introduced you before to Pam Bondi. The former Florida Attorney General often took part in events at the White House. Now she'll help make the case that senators should spare the president and let him keep his job in the Oval Office.
This thing is a big hoax. It's a big hoax. We call it, this is the current hoax.
Other members of the president's legal defense include Jane Raskin, who was part of the president's legal team during special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation, and Robert Ray, who was part of the Whitewater investigation of the Clintons. In the meantime, the president continues defending himself.
I've got to go through a hoax, a phony hoax, put out by the Democrats so they can try and win an election that hopefully they're not going to win. It was put out for purposes of winning an election. Our country is doing great.
White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow told us today he's annoyed the impeachment trial is taking attention away from the president's great economic record.
Impeachment and all the theater going with that could be an effort by the other side of the aisle to obstruct and obfuscate the economic progress we're making.
And now President Trump claims his impeachment is causing the 2020 election to be rigged against Democratic Senator Bernie Sanders. The president tweeting that Sanders should be campaigning ahead of the Iowa caucus, but instead will be participating in the trial here in Washington in the Senate. It's worth noting there are other Democratic senators who are also running for president who will be involved in that impeachment trial. Tracy.
White House correspondent Mark Irons, thanks for reporting for us tonight. On whether the Senate will call witnesses to the impeachment trial is a source of intense debate. Yesterday's announcement by the Government Accountability Office that the White House violated federal law by withholding military aid money to Ukraine is putting renewed pressure on GOP senators to include new witness testimony. Catholic News Agency's Matt Hadro reports now from Capitol Hill. Matt?
Tracy, several Republican senators say they want a speedy trial based solely on the evidence presented by the House. Senator Chuck Schumer is pushing for new witnesses and new evidence. Meanwhile, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that Democrats are playing political games. The trial comes at a key time for some senators as they will have to leave the campaign trail to go back to Washington.
I would rather be in Iowa today. There's a caucus there in 2.5 weeks. I'd rather be in New Hampshire. And in Nevada and so forth. But I swore a constitutional oath as a United States Senator to do my job, and I'm here to do my job.
Senator Sanders is eyeing the February 3rd Iowa caucus, as is his opponent, Senator Michael Bennet.
I'm in the middle of doing 50 town hall meetings, and I'm going to keep doing that and be in Iowa on Monday and then back in my seat in the Senate on Tuesday morning for the trial.
That trial will start promptly at 1 p.m. Tuesday in the Senate. Whether the matter of witnesses will be resolved remains unclear. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says arguments by the prosecutors and defense will come first.
And then a written question period, and then after that, the more contentious issue of witnesses would be addressed by the Senate.
A contentious issue Senator Chuck Schumer continues to push.
We must have witnesses, documents in order to have a fair trial. A trial without witnesses is not a trial.
and moderate Republicans like Senator Susan Collins of Maine increasingly seem to support. In a statement released yesterday, she states, "I have not made a decision on any particular witnesses. When we reach the appropriate point in the trial, I would like to hear from both sides about which witnesses, if any, they would like to call." Regarding witnesses, court experts point out that impeachment is not like a typical trial. Senators will function more as 100 judges sitting on a court than they will as typical jurors. And how the trial will play out will be up to them to decide. Tracy?
Catholic News Agency's Matt Hadra reporting tonight from Capitol Hill. Thanks, Matt. The Prime Minister of Ukraine has submitted his resignation. Oleksiy Honcharuk was caught on tape appearing to say the country's president knew nothing about the economy. Honcharuk says the recording was a compilation, and he blamed an unnamed group for trying to make it look like he disrespected the leader. Kiev's parliament now must vote on whether to accept the resignation. People took to the streets in downtown Amman, Jordan, to protest a natural gas deal between Jordan and Israel. As part of the $10 billion deal, U.S.-based Noble Energy will pump gas supplied from Israel's largest offshore natural gas field to Jordan. The deal has faced opposition by some Jordanians who view Israel as an enemy. Jordan, a U.S. ally which signed a peace treaty with Israel, said the agreement would help to stabilize energy prices in the kingdom for the next 10 years. Jordan imports about 95% of its energy. Our partners at Catholic News Agency report that the Vatican has picked the next bishop for Hong Kong, but is delaying the announcement. The wait is over fears that local clergy may see the selection of Father Peter Choi Wayman as too sympathetic to China's communist government. The Diocese of Hong Kong has been without a permanent leader since the former head died unexpectedly last January. And tonight, we take a closer look at the devastating wildfires in Australia that have been burning now since September, destroying more than 2,000 homes and killing at least 27 people. One of the towns impacted by the wildfires, the village of Wingello, which is roughly 100 miles south of Sydney. These pictures taken by members of the Rural Fire Brigade there show what firefighters faced as they battled the blaze earlier this month. Joining me now by Skype from Australia are Michael and Helen Brearley. Both are volunteer firefighters and residents of the village of Wingello. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Good morning, Tracy. Good morning from Australia.
Well, we've seen the pictures of the fires that was burning there, and they really are remarkable. Tell us what fighting those fires has been like.
The heat is intense. It's so hard to describe what it was like because the heat is just so intense. The noise is like a freight train just roaring, coming at you. And it's this huge unknown of, well, what is behind that heat? What is behind that noise? And certainly it's a time where the adrenaline cuts in and you start praying to Our Lady.
What's the situation like in Wingello right now?
Look, it's been 2 weeks since the fire. There's a lot of debris around at the moment. We've only just got back into our house now after 2 weeks. It's taken some time to recover services, but the mood is upbeat. The community spirit is excellent.
Helen, can I ask you what your experience has been like, your personal experience during this time?
It's difficult. I evacuated with my daughter because she has a young baby. And you leave not knowing what you're going to come back to. And yeah, it was hard, very hard.
And I know your house is being called the Miracle House. Can you tell us why?
Certainly. Look, on the night, there was a roaring fire front coming directly for our house. Our brigade was trying to save this house. They had to pull back. The heat was too intense. There was a fireball in the front yard. I was down at the fire station at the time. The brigade come to me in tears and said, "Mike, we've lost your house. Mike, we've lost your house." That was very sobering. But at first light, we came back to the house and we were just gobsmacked. The house was still standing. Everything else around it was destroyed, but the house was still there.
That is incredible. And I know throughout this time that your faith has been really important. Can you talk about that and how the support of fellow Catholics has helped you as well?
Look, our faith to us is everything. We had this house blessed And on the advice of a priest, one day beforehand, on the 3rd of January, at the Feast of the Holy Name, the priest said, dedicate your house to the holy name of Jesus. So we did that just one day beforehand. So we've certainly been very blessed. Our faith is very much part of our life. And we're very grateful that we are still in the house we have and that we're alive to talk about it.
Well, we are grateful too. Thank you both for joining us. We really appreciate it. Michael and Helen Brearley, volunteer firefighters with the Wingello Rural Fire Brigade in Australia. Thank you again for sharing your story, and God bless.
Thank you, Tracy. Bye for now.
Coming up, we hear from a Muslim leader who met with Pope Francis and why it was an important day for animals in Italy and Spain.
The Supreme Court will consider allowing the Trump administration to enforce rules that allow more employers to raise religious objections to covering contraceptives in employee health care plans. The justices agreed today to hear the case, which stems from President Barack Obama's health care overhaul. A new report says Christian persecution is a growing problem around the globe, affecting hundreds of millions of people. According to the latest report from Open Doors, an organization that documents abuses against Christians across the globe, 260 million Christians face persecution worldwide. That is up 6% from last year. The report puts North Korea first on its list of the 50 most dangerous countries in which to be a Christian. It is a designation the country has received in the past. And joining me now with his analysis is Jeremy Barker, Director of the Middle East Action Team at the Religious Freedom Institute. Jeremy, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on again, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you. So the news about North Korea, that's not necessarily surprising for any of us, but what's your reaction to this report overall, too?
Yeah, for North Korea to be topping the list again for the 18th year is not surprising given how the state seeks to control really all of life there. But this report, it really is important because they combine their on-the-ground reporting with cross-checked information by researchers and experts like colleagues at the Religious Freedom Institute. And so it gives us these in-depth country profiles, but also major trends of what's going on with persecution around the globe.
Yeah. I also want to turn to China. The country's moving up on the list of dangerous places for Christians. How's the government there responsible and playing a role in that persecution?
Yeah, I mean, really, China's laying out a blueprint for global repression. What they're doing, it's tantamount to a new cultural revolution where you have this combination of emerging technology, AI, being used for state surveillance and this enforcement of really the government as God. And if we want to see where this may be going for Christians, we only have to look at what's happening to their Uyghur Muslim community, where you have upwards of 1 million people in re-education camps because the government views their religious beliefs as a security threat. So this is a major issue in China, but we're seeing these trends being exported across the globe to other authoritarian regimes, and it really is concerning.
Yeah, and let's look at the Middle East too right now. What impact are the conflicts there having on Christians and other religious minorities?
Yeah, and in a place like Iraq or Syria where you've had conflict going on over the last number of years, communities like the Christians in Iraq, even the Yazidi minority, they really are on the edge of extinction in countries that have been their homelands for 2,000 plus years. There is maybe a glimmer of hope in the protest movements that are happening in Lebanon, in Iraq, even in Iran, where they're really pushing against sectarian policies that have been the heart of persecution. So even with the uptick in violence in the U.S. and Iran, tensions in the region, there is this sign of potential hope that could be good news for Christians, but what direction that goes still remains to be seen.
All right, Jeremy, quickly, before I let you go, what role does the U.S. government play and can or should play in improving conditions for Christians globally?
Yeah, well, the U.S. has been leading on this. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback, has been great on this issue, but it has to be more than just his office. Some officials are seeing this at the launch of the report. Assistant Secretary for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, Bob Destro, said that really he sees religious freedom as part of almost every issue that crosses his desk. But there is more we can do. Just two quick examples on China. The president just signed phase 1 of a major trade agreement with China. religious freedom, human rights, progress on those issues has to be part of the implementation and future phases of that agreement, not just for the government, but even businesses working in China. They can do much more to leverage their influence on these issues. And then globally, the U.S. can do more to elevate the priority of religious freedom that will impact our diplomacy, our security, but really our humanitarian assistance. So USAID, led by Administrator Mark Green, they've seen this kind of in an ad hoc way with their assistance to Christians. That needs to inform our foreign assistance policy across the globe. So I hope to see the U.S. government doing more on these issues.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
we
you
really
so much.
appreciate it. Thank you, Jeremy Barker, Director of the Middle East Action Team at the Religious Freedom Institute. Thanks again. Appreciate that. A review by Catholic leaders in Alaska finds credible evidence of sexual misconduct against 14 people with ties to the church. The probe was commissioned by the Archdiocese of Anchorage. At least half of the credibly accused are now dead. Bishop Andrew Balisaro says there are no words that can restore the innocence cruelly and unjustly stolen from the victims. The leader of the largest independent Muslim organization in the world met with Pope Francis this week to discuss his vision for a more peaceful future and greater human fraternity. Solen Tadier, European correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, sat down with Shaykh Yahya Holistrakov.
So welcome, thank you for being with us.
Mine.
Thank you. As the head of this organization that advocates a humanitarian Islam, you were attending this week a meeting, a gathering organized by Cardinal Ayuso, the current president of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. So you were attending this meeting with other religious leaders. So it was a closed conference, I've heard. So I was wondering, in substance, what was the nature of your discussions?
There is a concern, our common concern about the situation that we have now globally with so many conflicts related to religion. You know, among the places where United Nations deploys its peacekeeping squads, there are places with conflict related to religion. So now the Abrahamic faith, you know, namely Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, as the majority of people of religion in the world, should take a role in trying to resolve the problem and find a way out from this a very dangerous situation that the world is facing.
And what would be your personal definition of humanitarian Islam? What would that be according to you?
It's Islam that serves humanity as it is originally meant when it is revealed to the Prophet. And we feel that we need to bring this understanding out again, because we see that many Muslims actually sort of forget this true meaning of Islam. Many of Muslims see Islam or reduce the meaning of Islam only as a group identity rather than a noble values to be manifested in serving the well-being of all humanity.
And what are your expectations of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and of the Holy See on this specific matter?
See, first, we'd like to learn more about what's been done in the Catholic Church in what they call recontextualizing religion. In our discussion this couple of days with the Abrahamic Faith Initiative, we have a very compelling response also from Monsignor Khalid Akashe. he said that it's not just Islam that needs to recontextualize his teaching, but also other religion, especially the Abrahamic faith. What I am dreaming to see is that there will be a close working together among Abrahamic faith, Abrahamic religion especially, and also especially between the Catholic Church and Nahdlatul Ulama and Indonesian, the community of Indonesian Muslim, in bring about this idea of really materializing the ideal of religion as a truly beneficent grace of God to humanity.
And I believe Pope Francis is expected to visit Indonesia in the coming months.
Yeah.
Do you know something about it?
Yeah, I was told that that is the plan, and I even heard that the Indonesian authority already is informed about that too, and we are eagerly looking forward to have His Holiness in Indonesia, and hopefully we can have something together there with His Holiness that the world can see as an important momentum for a better future of humanity.
St. Francis of Assisi is the patron saint of animals, but in Italy and Spain, another saint also looks out for creatures and pets, and his feast day is today. In Madrid, they celebrated the feast of St. Anthony the Abbot by blessing pets outside of a church. The tradition is meant to bring the animals health and protection in the coming year. A crowded annual mass also takes place, and even the pets are welcome inside the church. The festival has been part of the church calendar in Madrid since the 1980s. And in Rome, Vicar Cardinal Angelo Comastri carries out a traditional blessing of farm animals. It took place near St. Peter's Square.
Up next, Pope Francis gives the recipe for spiritual well-being.
Pope Francis says the essence of life is a relationship with God.
Il Signore ci insegna che anche la salute del cuore, la salute spirituale.
At his daily Mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father says physical health is a gift we must preserve, but the Lord teaches we also must prioritize our spiritual well-being, and diseases of the soul are cured by seeking forgiveness for our sins. The Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem is a Catholic institution dating back hundreds of years. It has around 30,000 members, and its current headquarters is undergoing quite a facelift. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Alan Holdren has more.
The Cardinal Dominique de la Rovere Palace has a long tradition of beauty and nobility. Designed by the same architect that drew up the Sistine Chapel, the former residence of the Cardinal is today the headquarters of the Order of the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. Designed at the end of the 15th century by Baccio Pontelli, the architect of the Sistine Chapel, the palace is one of the finest examples of Renaissance residences. Cristina Del Gallo, together with Molika Gaetani, were tasked with rescuing these important frescoes from degradation.
When we assembled the scaffolding, we realized that they were rebuilt in plaster, so the wood is only painted, and with the water there were collapses, dangerous ones even, so we had to rearrange the beams by putting them in real wood and fixing, securing all the painted boards of the 400 that have been re-adhered with very strong screws, and checked all of them in this room. The first thing we did was to secure the paint film, so we tried to extract the salts from the masonry that obscured the paintings as well as eliminated and absorbed the yellowish stains of the water that ran behind the wall. We discovered that under these salts, there were very evident remains of the painting. For example, parts of an eye, a hand, very well preserved because it was painted on a wet plaster, which then resisted the damage.
We rediscover that under these mineral deposits, the color still exists. So the color has been rediscovered also because much was covered by the old restorations made in 1950. Before, the restorer was a painter, so he would repaint the missing parts. But now we only do conservation. So we clean it, we fix the color, we maintain it, but we do nothing else. The aim is not to see anything that has been done. The biggest compliment is if someone says to me, "But you haven't touched it, you haven't done anything," because it's a job you shouldn't see.
The frescoes were done by one of the greatest Italian artists, Pinturicchio, together with his pupils. The fact that the fresco survived such extensive water damage demonstrates its impressive quality, similar to those found in the Raphael rooms or even that of the Sistine Chapel. These magnificent paintings of the Renaissance with battle motifs in some way tie the past with the present and resemble the mission of the current owners of the palace, who fight the battle for good.
And that was Alan Holdren reporting for us tonight. And finally tonight, a photographer for EWTN and Así Prensa wins a prestigious journalism award. Daniel Abanez has won the Italian Cultural Association's Award for Religious Information in the category of Young Promise. You've seen his work on the show and many other EWTN outlets. He takes photographs of events throughout the Vatican, especially those involving Pope Francis. A hearty and heartfelt congratulations to Daniel. Thank you for watching tonight, and for the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We'll have special programming on Monday, but we're back on Tuesday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.